So, oh, there we go. That's even better. Okay. If you want to read a great book on sex, called Dr. Tatiana's Sex Advice for All Creation. Now, we kind of think that human sexuality is kind of interesting. We're basically obsessed with it. But the kinds of things that other animals do, and other plants and other organisms in terms of sex, is absolutely wild. I mean, we're kind of like, you know, sex for us is kind of like stay-at-home parents that don't do anything but sit on a couch. Okay. So, first of all, we kind of, why is there sex again? Anybody? We just kind of covered that. Mm-hmm.
To reproduce and leave offspring?
Okay, so in terms of reproduction, sexual reproduction is one kind of reproduction. Asexual reproduction is another. And remember how I told you that asexual reproduction in a stable environment is actually far superior. But in an environment that changes or is different spatially, sex gives you all these different genetic combinations that you wouldn't get with clonal sex. And one of those combinations might just be the one that survives when, let's say, things change and all the other ones don't. So they have a phenotype that's adaptive. Okay? So sex gives you, plus it turns out that natural selection is much more effective in terms, or evolution by natural selection is much more effective in terms of spreading alleles throughout the population, gene flow, than asexual. So let's say you have an asexual population and a new disease shows up. And they're all clones of one another, and they're all susceptible, they all die. They go extinct. Whereas with the sexual population, you might have one or two offspring that are actually less susceptible to this parasite. And they make up then most of the next generation because they're the ones that survive and reproduce. So sex gives you that advantage, but at the same time, you can't produce as many offspring with sex as you can with clonal reproduction. It's costly in terms of how many offspring you can produce. It's also sometimes complicated and sometimes dangerous. Think about mate location versus free spawning. Let's say your orangutans, females essentially, they have sex by coercion by the males. It's called rape. And then you're only half related to your offspring. Okay, now, so the only drawback, of course, for asexual reproduction is if they're all clones, you hate yourself. Okay, blah, blah, blah. It combines gametes and creates a unique offspring. We went over that. Organs that produce gametes are called testes and ovaries. And what kind of cells are they? Are they somatic cells or germline cells? Germline cells. So the only cells that produce cells that can be inherited, where characters can be inherited, is through the germline. So if you remember about cancer, a lot of your, most cancer is in autosomes, somatic cells. They're never passed on to another person, right? There's only some cancers that are actually cause a mutation that makes it likely someone will have a cancer, and that's passed on the germline. So with cancer, it's all kind of sporadic mutations. So gametogenesis, that means making gametes, involves what kind of cell division? Meiosis or mitosis? Huh? Meiosis, right. Okay. Okay, now we're going to talk about gender. We found this new aquatic species that produces sexually. Individuals release gametes into the water where fertilization takes place. That means the males release sperm, the females release eggs. One parent is big, aggressive, and releases larger gametes. The other parent is smaller, kind of cute, and releases smaller gametes. So, which is the female?
A.
Exactly. A. Size has nothing to do with it. It's size of the gametes that determines gender. Okay? Larger gametes. Now, of course, with us, it's the opposite. Females are smaller on average, and they produce big gametes, and the males produce small gametes. There's all kinds of different kinds of fertilization. External, pretty boring in general. So I have to say I've seen salmon spawning in rivers. And so the female digs out what's called a red and lays her eggs, and then the big salmon swims over it and releases the sperm. When he does that, his whole body shakes like he's having an orgasm. Maybe he is, I don't know. But pollen, another thing, it's like, well, plants don't have, do they have a sense of enjoyment? I don't think so. Okay. But there's also a lot of animals that have internal fertilization. Some beetles up there, some tortoises, some penguins. Males have, generally they have a copulatory organ that releases sperm inside the female. Internal fertilization allowed life to move away from water. Okay, because you need eggs that can survive away from water, and you need animals that can survive as well. And by having sex internally, you didn't have to worry so much about the eggs drying out. Okay, sex change. So I was talking about hermaphrodites before. You remember, what's that clownfish name? Nemo? Yeah, okay. Well, Nemo was a Nemo, except that he eventually became a Nema. Okay? Yes. He's a sequential hermaphrodite. It turns out the Nemos, they have a territory on the reef. There's a bunch of males and there's one female. Okay? Most of the fish are male. some are more dominant behaviorally than others. So if something happens to the female, then Nemo becomes the new Nema. So Nema is you can just imagine how understanding Nema actually is about differences in sex. You know, they say like men are from Mars and women are from Venus. Well, Nema's done it all, right? And so the whole potential, so in that sense, they're probably far more intellectually advanced than us in terms of gender relations. They don't need to take a gender studies class if they can, you know, be both. So this is a praying mantis. They're a major predator. They're not of humans because they're insects that are about, well, they grow fairly long, but as you can see. When a female is ready to mate, she sends out pheromones, which the males find attractive. The thing is, these are arch predators. I mean, anything will set them off in terms of trying to eat something else. I mean, a big one, female, will eat a small female, doesn't matter, right? Cannibals. But it turns out the females eat the males during sex. The thing is, if you start eating the male in the wrong way, he won't be able to transfer his sperm to you. So what happens is, just as they start to copulate, she actually eats his head off. He doesn't eat his head. Remember how you think with your men think with their penises, right? Okay. Intromittent organ, that's what it's called. So while he's still copulating with her, she's merrily chomping away at the rest of them. So, like I said, Dr. Tatiana's sex advice, women, of course, men a lot of times behave very terribly towards women. But in this case, wouldn't it be nice if, well, maybe not eat them, but still, you know, you just kind of kill them on command for being an asshole, right? Okay. Now, a lot of insects get around this by the male coming along and presenting a gift to the female, a food gift, kind of like chocolate to your girlfriend. While they're busy, the females are busy eating the food gift, you're copulating with them. That's why they like chocolate. Are you going to turn me in? Go ahead. Okay. So, like I said, there's a lot of weird shit going on. And in a sense, okay, the male dies like that, but at the same time, he's also providing nutrients to the female for his offspring. He's giving up his life for his kids, literally. And all that stuff that is food that can be turned into, you know, ATP, female eats it, and it helps in terms of how many offspring she can actually produce. Plus, she does another thing. She stores a male sperm for later use. So depending on, you know, when she gets more food. Now, she doesn't completely need males for food, but they show up, so use them. Oh, okay. Another one. Have you guys heard about anglerfish? Okay, they have, actually right here. Where the hell is, oh yeah, it doesn't show it very well, but there's an angler thing here. And it wiggles, okay, to attract other fish, which they then eat. Okay. Now, all the big ones that eat are the females. okay? It's only these little guys down here who are the males. Basically, all he is a gonad with the ability to move around. Okay? Well, that's all males are anyway. You know, we're sperm delivery devices. Okay? And but this is, in this case, in terms of male gender, all they're there is basically a pair of gonads that then can swim around, and they then act like a parasite. They actually embed themselves into a female and lose all ability to eat. They can now get blood supply from the female, and all they do is give her all the sperm they can produce. So she might actually have a number of males embedded in herself. Okay? They're just basically sexual parasites, but at the same time necessary ones in terms of reproduction. Okay, so as we mentioned, gender is all about the size of the gametes. So you can see in terms of a human, egg cell is much, much, much larger than a sperm. Okay. If you go to the website on Moodle, you can see this short little film on fertilization. For that, we'll hold it there. I'll also probably open up some more Top Hat for as far as we've gone in terms of reproduction. But remember, all this stuff is not going to be on the test. I've covered after, it only goes up to the last lecture that I just did before this. Okay?